Hey guys, since it's the spooky season and the Switch 2 recently came out, I thought it would be a good idea to check out some pixelated horror games that may be newer, but still feel like the Super Nintendo era. Now most of these games you can also play on Switch 1, Steam, various other platforms, but for this video I happen to be using a Switch 2. Now I'd also like to point out that I'm not necessarily telling you that all of these are great, but you can look at them, hear my opinion, and see if these are something you'd like to check out. And lastly, before we get into the video, I'd like to point out that a lot of these have that new pixelated style that is obviously different from the actual 8-bit and 16-bit era. These are just a similar vibe. Now all that being said, let's get on to the games. Firstly, we have an interesting little package called Retro Realms. I know, it's a vague title, but basically it's a collection of two retro-inspired games based on the iconic horror franchises Ash vs. the Evil Dead and Halloween. These are two separate games with identical gameplay, but I don't say that as a bad thing. The gameplay style is a hack and slash side-scroller that's easy to just pick up and play. In Ash vs. the Evil Dead, you play as Ash with your trusty chainsaw hand, and you could also use a shotgun. The main mechanic in these games is using an eyeball to switch realms to get around obstacles and obtain items. Like here, my pathway is blocked, so I busted out my trusty eyeball and switched into another realm that allowed me to get by. Or here, I needed to switch realms to get this page for the Necronomicon. The feature is pretty cool because it switches up the vibe by totally changing the environment, but it's not annoying to utilize. There's also funny little details going on, like these monsters fighting over a body and this guy dangling from the power lines. The colors also really pop in this, and I'm in love with the sky. You collect money throughout the game to buy item upgrades in the shop, along with movie tickets. And in the Halloween game, you play as Michael Myers, hacking and slashing your way out of the insane asylum. You also collect candy corn and syringes. Isn't that a nice combo? You switch to the Nightmare realm the same way as in the Evil Dead game by using the eyeball. Your charge attack in this one is a forward thrusting knife attack. The differences here are mainly just cosmetic, like collecting pumpkins instead of tickets, but I don't see the problem with the same type of gameplay. It's a fun formula, and I like the fact that you can pick the franchise that you like the most. Imagine you're trying to get out of an insane asylum and there's dudes in straitjackets running back and forth on the ceiling lights. It's both terrifying and funny to think about. There's a lot of standout enemies here, like this beam shooting eyeball that makes a shotgun sound for some reason. That's fantastic. You could also kill the nurses in this, which surprised me, because at first I thought they'd just jump out of the way, but no, none of them are safe. All in all, it's a basic platformer, hack and slash game, but it controls well, the worlds are fun, and it's easy to pick up and play. It doesn't need to be anything more than this. It's refreshing and I recommend it. Now let's talk about Blasphemous 2. I decided to choose this one over the first Blasphemous game because I heard this one was a little more approachable than the first one. If you somehow don't know, the Blasphemous games are metroidvanias, but with more of a focus on the combat than your average Symphony of the Night clone. The games obviously have a very dark and gothic style, but more gory and intense. I also hear this being referred to as a Souls-like, but I don't want to get into that since it's out of my wheelhouse. Anyway, like I mentioned, you can get away with little parrying in this game if you choose the flail weapon, called the Veredicto. It's very satisfying to swing this thing around and absolutely destroy enemies. While in the first game, you have to get good at parrying. And that's totally fine, I guess, but I find it a bit annoying, so I prefer the second game if I'm using the flail. At least so far, as I haven't played a ton of this game yet, but I can tell I'd probably really enjoy it. All of the enemies are pretty cool in this game, and some of the bigger ones are actually pretty unsettling. Like this guy, for example, is pretty neat looking when the green dust comes up off the floor. The game definitely has that 16-bit vibe with the pixels, but also more modern graphics mixed in. It's really nice to look at, and you can tell a lot of attention to detail went into this, in both gameplay and visuals. I suppose that's why it's such a success. In the beginning, you quickly encounter your first boss to give you a taste of what you're getting into. It takes a second to get the pattern down, but once you do, it's not so bad. The cutscenes are really well done, and you can even skip them if you want, which is always a very welcomed feature. And there's not only grotesque monsters, there's pigeons too. So yeah, it's an obvious choice for some pixelated horror action for the Halloween season or whenever you're feeling spooky. Carrion is a very unique horror game published by Devolver Digital back in 2020. The first thing I thought of when I started up this game was Alien 3 on NES, but like, if everything was opposite. What's cool about this game is you play as a monster that's a giant mess of tentacles that keeps on growing depending on how many humans you eat. Even though it's pixelated, it's still wonderfully gory and pretty insane. Your goal is to make your way through some type of facility while killing every human who gets in your path. You also use your giant tentacles for grabbing items and opening doors. In the beginning, there is a lot of screaming. A little too much, honestly, but that gets toned down once the game gets going. Because you're a giant tentacle monster, there are a lot of different ways in which you can kill. You can swing them around and bang them on stuff, use your cobweb attack, or just straight up grab them and eat them. The eating animation is kind of funny. The cobweb attack is actually pretty cool, and you can use it to grab things, open doors, or straight up kill your enemies. When you see these little holes in the wall, you get sucked into it and it becomes a save spot. It's cool the way you move around with your many tentacles grabbing onto things while you're squeezing through tubes and holes in the wall. I can't say there are many games like this. It's very unique and it's pretty fun. You eventually encounter guys with guns and they usually aren't too hard to kill, but sometimes you'll be getting shot at and it takes you too long to see where the guy is. It also can get a bit tricky control-wise, at least on the Switch, because you're trying to aim with the control stick and press ZR to grab the item, and sometimes it could just be a bit weird. Now, although it's kind of like Metroid in the sense you get new abilities to get to new areas, I wouldn't say it's a Metroidvania. It's pretty linear and there's no map. You regain health by eating humans or going to save points. You have to make sure the people are actually dead that you hit, because they can hop back up and start shooting at you when you least expect it. This got me a few times. Eventually things switch up and you play as one of the humans, and this is where I stopped, but I feel like this only lasts for a little bit before you turn back into your gruesome, tentacled alien self. Iron Meat is a retro-inspired run-and-gun that's full of gory action. It's a lot like Contra when it comes to its weapons, gameplay, and level design, but it's also giving Doom vibes as well, especially in the cool animated intro. Yeah, Contra is all about aliens, but Iron Meat is a little more demonic and a lot more gory. As expected, you're killing lots and lots of space bugs and robotic creatures, which is always a good time, and it gets more insane as you get further into the game. You get different power-ups like a version of Spread, a laser, and more, and you can switch between weapons kind of like in Contra Alien Wars. I love this boss here. It's a giant robotic skeleton dude, and it's your job to slowly break his face apart, piece by piece. Uh-oh, there goes the eyeball. It's pretty entertaining. Who knew a robot skeleton would spew this much blood? After you beat the game, you can jump around levels, which is pretty cool. All in all, it's a really fun game with great graphics, great gameplay, and great music. Next up, we have Axiom Verge, a Metroidvania from 2015, and I can't believe this is already 10 years old. Anyway, although it's a Metroidvania, it's actually more of a Metroid clone than a Symphony of the Night clone, which is pretty rare. I say this because you fight things, get the upgrades, and go on to the next thing. No bloated story to slow you down. Not that story is always bad, but you know, sometimes you're in the mood for more action than dialogue. The first thing that stood out to me were the very 80s sounding sci-fi sound effects and the pulsating synths in the beginning. It's a great atmosphere and I totally dig it. The graphics are really pleasing to look at, and this enemy is a great example. When shots are fired at it, it has this cool static effect that I thought was really rad. And when you kill an enemy, sometimes these little red sparkles appear that are your health. Games need more sparkles. You get upgrades like this projectile weapon that's very satisfying to use. You can throw it and then detonate it to blow up rocks and hit buttons. And of course, there are plenty of cool bosses, like this robotic looking shellfish filled with meat. I don't know what it is, but it's cool when it explodes. You also get a drill weapon that allows you to plow through rocks to get to new places, and this is where the game really gets going. This is a unique mechanic, but I suppose it works similar to Metroid's Morph Ball Bomb. There's also these Broccoli Boy enemies that I think are pretty cute, and this enemy that is absolutely terrifying. He reminds me of a zombified Mr. Game & Watch. Something that should have never existed, but it does in Axiom Verge. Now let's take a look at The Last Faith, which is definitely inspired by Symphony of the Night, and it has everything you would expect a Metroidvania to have. You play as a stylish little dude named Eric, but it's Eric with a Y to be all mysterious and special. The atmosphere and backgrounds are fantastically spooky with a nice art style. You can roll and dash as you'd expect, and you guessed it, the save spot is a throne. The enemy placement is good, and you can duck under projectiles and jump onto ladders, which is always a plus in terms of gameplay. I really enjoyed the enemy designs here, like the beefy little maid who screams and tries to shove axes into you. They're surprisingly hard to take down. I also like these spooky umbrella women. There are annoying things though, like the speed of the dialogue. I get it. it, the vibe is old and ghostly. But if you actually let the dialogue play out and listen to it, it is insanely slow-paced.
Not anguish, but an acceptance of the truth that has evaded me for so long.
I know I'm not the most patient when it comes to dialogue in games, but this was like painstakingly tedious to listen to. Also, there's too many animation frames happening when you want to flip around or pick up an item. I feel like this also takes forever, which can cause you to get hit when you're simply trying to turn around. It drove me crazy. So overall, it's a pretty standard Symphony of the Night clone in an oversaturated market of metroidvanias in the same style. However, if the formula's not broken, then don't fix it, I guess. If you've played every Castlevania game and you want more, then I'd say go for it. But if you still haven't played games like Aria's Sorrow, then please experience that first. Next up was a surprisingly charming and enjoyable little game called Death Road to Canada. You and a group of friends need to flee the United States because there's a zombie outbreak and the only safe place left is Canada. At first I was worried this would be one of those indie games with the stereotypical, constant, quirky humor in the dialogue that usually makes me sigh, but it was actually pretty okay. It's lighthearted and humorous without being annoying. The music is very bouncy and surf rock inspired at first, but it changes up as you go through the different areas. You have a computer buddy that tags along with you and they kind of just trail behind you killing things to help you out. It's thankfully not an annoying scenario like Minnie in Mickey Mousecapade where you have to constantly look out for her and wait for her to catch up. One of the first things you do here is go to Walmart for supplies, and it's full of abandoned shopping carts and cars. Here, you grab things like bullets and food while fighting and dodging zombies. You don't have to kill every enemy, as the goal is to just get as many supplies as you need. The zombies were even in the bathroom, along with a pile of poop that was probably there before the outbreak started. Hey, it's Walmart after all, so I wouldn't be surprised. In these locations, your buddy is with you, helping you fight off zombies, but sometimes they pick up an item that you want, which is kind of annoying. As you go from location to location, they give you a forecast of what you're getting into and the different choices of where to go. Like, you could choose between a pharmacy or a bar. And keeping with the fun names of places, this bar was called Moe's. I like all the different locations you can explore. Some events just happen in text, which is fine. Like this part where we dug up our friend in the graveyard. It's like they just wanted to quickly mention things to move the plot along, which is totally fine. All in all, this is a fun little game that you can totally tell is from 2016, but not in a bad way. I recommend it, and I actually want to play more of it. Next up, we have a game that's been on my list of games to play for years, and I finally decided to give it a shot. This is called Slain, Back from Hell, and the first thing I noticed is how vibrant and awesome the game is visually. Now, it is a little weird since it blends styles. For example, while everything else is pixelated, the blood and fog is not. But I don't hate it. It's a mix of pixels and more modern graphics, but it looks cool. You play as a character that looks like you took Alucard from Castlevania and put him in a metal band, which is pretty cool. You're running around hacking and slashing all kinds of monsters, but it definitely has a bit of a learning curve and it isn't as straightforward as you think. You mostly use a giant sword as your main weapon, but you can also fire an energy beam thing. The tricky thing though is getting a hang of the critical strike move because you have to time it just right or else it doesn't work and you'll end up getting absolutely destroyed. You have to get really good at anticipating when to use it because it takes a while to charge up. And even before you do that, you also have to learn how to time when to block the enemy first. So yeah, this is all about timing, and I'm not gonna lie, I had a hard time getting the hang of this. The difficulty quickly ramps up and the enemy respawning rate is a little nuts. So that's another reason why you gotta be really good at blocking. You also need to watch out for these sneaky traps that are almost totally hidden by crows. So if you see a bunch of crows, chances are these are some shiny, very pointy spikes just waiting to impale you. All in all, this is a really cool looking game that I wish I enjoyed more than I did. The timing just drove me a bit insane, but maybe you'd be better at it than I was. Next up, we have an arcade-inspired game called Internum X. It's a platformer that has some puzzle elements, and it made me think of the old arcade game Bomb Jack the first time I saw it. You could choose between arcade mode or home mode, and I went with home mode so I could save my progress. The overworld map is totally inspired by Ghosts and Goblins, which is quickly confirmed by the jingle played when you enter the game. It has a gothic church type of vibe, and you're playing as a little guy named Sir Arthur. Yes, the guy in Ghosts and Goblins is also named Sir Arthur. So this is like a cute little love letter to the infamous NES game. It's all the things you'd want for a retro-inspired horror game. Goblins, bats, and platforms with bloody spikes. You have to open all the chests in order to proceed to the next level. Yeah, it's a simple concept, but difficulty definitely increases as you progress with more and more enemies. Some chests you have to open by hitting them from underneath, and you eventually gain weapons like a fireball, but they seem to be limited. The boss stage has a different look, and instead you're jumping upwards while dodging plenty of Grim Reapers and pig soldiers. Eventually you get to the top and you see this king demon guy. You gotta dodge a ton of fireballs while also trying to get in hits, so it's easier said than done. Overall, it's a fun and simple arcade game. It definitely gets more frustrating as you go on, but not so much that you want to turn it off. And lastly, I had to include Bloodstained Curse of the Moon because this is the perfect game for fans of Castlevania. And what's the Halloween season without a little Castlevania in your life? I did a Let's Play video on this back when this game came out, and I absolutely loved it. It's a NES-style platformer with gameplay that is extremely similar to Castlevania 3. So if you like Dracula's Curse, then you'll love Curse of the Moon. There's a lot of similarities here, like being able to choose from different characters and different paths. Unlike some of the games on this list, the color scheme here has a lot of sections that give a very NES vibe, which is always nice. The sprites and backgrounds seem like they are right out of the classic Castlevania universe, so I love it. If you haven't played it yet and you enjoy the original Castlevania games, then you have to check this one out. I've done a ton of videos on this channel, so I know how all of this goes by now. If you're still watching and you weren't one of the 80% of people that kind of check out after the first 30 seconds, did you like anything that I said? Did this inspire you to play any of the games? Did anything I say in this video interest you at all? If it didn't, that's fine, but leave a comment and let me know why. Maybe if you drop a comment, it will boost the algorithm so it'll show this video to more people. But even that's doubtful because YouTube is apparently broken. Did you see Red Letter Media's video about this site being a mess for creators? What do you think the reason is that the site is broken? You can comment about that too. Or what your favorite cereal is, or color. It doesn't really matter, does it? I heard there is a new Simpsons movie coming out. Want to talk about that in the comments? Go ahead. Let's boost that broken algorithm. See you in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.